They called the cops on me for camping next to my own lake. At midnight, 3 patrol cars pulled up like I was some fugitive red and blue lights flashing across the water I've owned for 10 years. The HOA president, Victoria Harlow, stepped out in heels that didn't belong anywhere near ranch dirt, pointed at me and said, "That's the trespasser. I built this place with my bare hands. Buried my heart in this soil the day I lost Emily. And now I'm being treated like a criminal." But while Victoria's screaming about community regulations, she forgot one thing: I've got cameras. And those cameras, they caught more than she'd ever want you to see. Late-night visits, secret dumpings, HOA board members creeping onto my land like thieves in the dark. This isn't just about property anymore. This is war, and what I'm about to reveal will destroy everything she's built. That night was supposed to be mine. I had just finished a long shift at the warehouse, grabbed a 6-pack and 2 ham sandwiches, and drove out to the lake, my lake. It's where Emily and I used to sit every Friday evening, watching the sunset melt into the water like gold. I set up the old camping chair in our usual spot. It creaked under my weight, same as always. The fire crackled beside me. Stars blinked overhead. Wind rustled the cottonwoods like they were whispering her name. I could almost hear her laugh, almost feel her hand on my arm. I wasn't just camping, I was remembering, holding on, and for a brief, beautiful moment, I forgot the world. Until those sirens ripped through the silence, rude, violent, unwelcome. That's when I saw her, Victoria, marching toward me like a queen without a crown, like she owned what I bled to keep. She didn't introduce herself, didn't ask questions. Victoria Harlow walked straight up to the cops, chin high, like she was walking a red carpet, and said, "That's him, he's trespassing." I stood up slowly, my boots grinding into the gravel, fists clenching without permission. "This is my land," I said, voice steady. "I've owned it for 10 years. Victoria scoffed. "This lake falls under Crestview Heights watershed rights. Your camping is disturbing residents." The officer, Brian, an old high school buddy, looked uncomfortable, scratched the back of his neck like he used to when caught lying to teachers. "Jake?" "Look, we got a complaint," he muttered. "We need to sort this out." I pulled out the deed, folded, weathered, and signed in ink that cost me every cent I had. Brian reached for it. Victoria snatched it. "These could be fake," she snapped. And just like that, the truth meant nothing. My jaw clenched so tight I thought I'd crack a tooth. Victoria flipped through my deed like it was junk mail, then tossed it back at me. "Looks homemade," she sneered. Brian didn't even catch it. Just stood there, shifting his weight, eyes darting between us like he was waiting for a cue. "I bought this land with every dollar I had. My parents' savings. Emily's and mine," I said, voice shaking, not from fear, but fury. Victoria crossed her arms. "Then sue us. Meanwhile, you need to leave." Brian stepped in. "Jake, just for tonight, let's keep the peace while we sort things out. Peace." This wasn't peace. This was surrender. But the look in Victoria's eyes told me everything she wasn't done. This wasn't about one night. It was a takeover. And I was the last piece in her little HOA puzzle. I packed up in silence, but my war had just begun. The truck door slammed harder than I meant. My gear rattled in the bed as I drove down that lonely ranch road, headlights bouncing off the fence posts Emily and I once painted white. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. One text: "Leave the lake, or you'll lose more than land." I slammed the brakes. The silence around me felt heavier now, like something watching from the dark. My heart pounded not from fear, but disbelief. This wasn't HOA politics anymore. This was a threat. I stared out into the black trees, gripping the wheel until my knuckles ached. Victoria didn't just want me gone, she wanted me erased. Back home, I spread every deed map and tax receipt I had across the kitchen table. 10 years of proof, but none of it mattered. If someone was willing to break the law to bury me, and I had a sick feeling they already had. The documents lay like a battlefield pages of tax records, water rights, zoning permits. And then I saw it. An old town hall map I'd requested years ago, yellowed and torn at the edges. I hadn't looked at it in forever, but there, scribbled faintly near the lake, was a single word. Shared. Faded. Almost invisible. Written in pencil. My stomach dropped. Who wrote that? Why, it wasn't on the newer versions. It wasn't on my deed. But if someone found this, twisted it could be enough to cast doubt, to fabricate history. I took a photo, then traced it with my finger, trying to shake the chill crawling up my spine. Was this Victoria's leverage? Or was someone else feeding her this angle? I didn't sleep that night. Just stared at that one word. Shared. Nothing ever is unless someone wants to steal it. And suddenly, I knew who might have answers. By sunrise, I was knocking on Evelyn Harper's door. She'd lived out here since before Crestview Heights existed, back when this land was just wild grass and stubborn ranchers. If anyone knew what shared meant, it was her. She opened the door in her robe, eyes sharp despite the hour. "Jake Miller," she said, like she'd been expecting me. "Let me guess Victoria's sniffing around your lake." I showed her the map. She didn't flinch. "Oh, honey," she muttered, pouring tea like it was wartime again. "This isn't new. I've seen HOA signs pop up on land they had no claim to. They tried it with the Garrisons 5 years back, almost bankrupted them. What happened, I asked. They didn't fight hard enough." Evelyn reached into a dusty file cabinet and pulled out a folder marked Garrison vs. Crestview HOA. "Let's make sure you do." And just like that, my fight got allies. I barely got home when my inbox pinged. Subject line, cease and desist. Crestview Heights HOA. The sender, Victoria Harlow. It wasn't just a bluff, it was a full-blown legal threat. Dozens of attachments. Claims of community watershed rights, environmental disruption, unauthorized use of protected land. But what made my blood run cold were the photos. Me. Sitting by the lake, cooking hot dogs, fixing the old dock. Dozens of pictures taken from different angles, different days. Timestamps going back months. Someone had been watching me, documenting me, like I was a criminal trespasser on my own property. They'd been planning this. Every visit, every footprint, every quiet moment I thought I had to myself cataloged and weaponized. I slammed the laptop shut, heart thudding. This wasn't petty drama anymore. This was an operation, and I had to find out how deep it went before they buried me with it. The knock came just after 7 a.m. I looked through the peephole and saw Todd, Brennan Victoria's shadow, a slippery type who smiled too much and blinked too fast. He wore a cheap suit that didn't quite fit and held a manila envelope like it was ticking. "Mr. Miller," he started, grin already sweating. "Mrs. Harlow sent me. We've got a generous offer." He didn't wait for an invite. "Sign over lake rights and this all goes away. No lawsuits, no public embarrassment. She'll even throw in a little compensation." His eyes kept flicking to the driveway like he was ready to bolt. "And if I don't," I asked, my voice flat. The smile dropped. "Then you'll lose more than just water." He handed me the envelope. Inside, a pre-filled quitclaim deed and a check with way too many zeros. I looked up. "Tell Victoria she just made the worst mistake of her life." Todd flinched when I stepped closer. "I'm not some lonely fool you can scare with legalese and a blank check," I said, eyes locked on his. "My papers don't just talk, they win." His smirk twitched. "Suit yourself. But just remember, you had a chance to walk away." I followed him outside, watched his car kick up dust like a coward running from his own reflection. Back inside, I snapped photos of the deed, the check the envelope proof of attempted coercion. I emailed it to Brian's subject line, "They're escalating." Then I went back to the map. That cursed word, shared. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was surgical, a hostile takeover masked in HOA policy. I poured black coffee into a chipped mug and stared out at the lake. They thought I'd roll over, but they didn't bury Emily here. I did, and I'd burn their kingdom down before I gave an inch. Evelyn's living room felt like a time capsule. framed black and white photos, faded newspapers, and one cardboard box marked Garrison. She set it down like it weighed more than history. They were good folks, she said. Owned property down near the creek, until the HOA claimed their well was public. Next thing you know, their boundary line was redrawn. She pulled out court documents filed, dismissed, buried. By the time they realized they were drowning in fees and fake violations, it felt too familiar. They moved out in silence, like ghosts. My fingers tightened around a newspaper clipping. HOA Victory headline. Victoria wasn't mentioned, but the strategy, the style, the tactics, identical. "This isn't new," I muttered. "No," Evelyn said, "but you might be the first one with enough fire to fight back." She handed me one last folder, dusty and sealed. "This one, it's about Victoria, or whatever her name was before Texas." The folder was brittle, its corners frayed like it had survived a fire. Inside, a name I didn't recognize, Patricia Langley. A younger version of Victoria stared up from a mugshot. Same sharp eyes, same smug chin tilt. The headline read, "Real estate agent loses multi-million-dollar lawsuit for land fraud, Nevada. 7 years ago. She'd forged documents, targeted elderly homeowners, claimed easements that didn't exist. When she lost, she disappeared, but not before pocketing a payout and tanking her husband's law license." I flipped to the last page. Name, change. Filing. Patricia Langley. Victoria Harlow. It wasn't just a coincidence. It was a cover-up. She'd rebuilt her empire under a new name, new state, new victims. And now she was circling my lake like it was her next conquest. But I wasn't going to end up like the Garrisons. This time, the predator picked the wrong ghost to haunt. I drove straight to town hall, made sure I asked loud enough for people to hear. Looking into expanding my parcel, I said, "Might buy the stretch behind the HOA clubhouse." An HOA board member lurking nearby stiffened. Perfect. Then I called Brian. Todd offered a payoff. "I've got proof. I'll log it," he said. His voice was flat, hesitant, but cracks were showing. Back at the ranch, I started fixing old cameras loudly, letting Evelyn accidentally mention I was installing security again. They're cheap ones, I told her, just loud enough for neighbors to overhear. Probably won't catch much at night, but the truth. The real cameras were already hidden in birdhouses' fence posts under rocks, motion activated, infrared. Streaming straight to my laptop. Victoria thought she had eyes everywhere. She didn't know mine were sharper. I didn't need to fight her lies in the dark. I just needed her to walk into the light. The surrender letter was short. Just the right amount of defeat. "I can't fight anymore. Please, stop destroying the only thing I have left of her." I signed it with a shaky hand and gave it to Evelyn, who played the concerned neighbor like she was born for theater. By sundown, the HOA gossip train was on fire. Victoria was celebrating. Photos popped up online, her laughing with board members, toasting champagne like she'd won the Super Bowl. She had no idea the cameras had already caught her at the lake last week, gloved hands, chemical barrel moonlight reflecting in toxic ripples. She thought she'd buried me, but all she'd done was show the world her crown plastic crooked and cracking. That night I sat by the window watching the road. If she made one more move, I'd catch it. And if she didn't, I'd make the first. Because my next step was public. Midnight. Stillness blanketed the ranch until my laptop blinked. Motion alert. I clicked. A figure crept from the trees, dragging something that left a deep groove in the dirt. My breath caught. Not Todd. This one moved. Deliberate, like a queen checking her borders. Moonlight hit HOA badge glinted. My hands trembled on the trackpad, heart hammering. She knelt, uncapped a barrel. Thick black liquid poured into the lake, rippling where Emily once floated wildflowers. Then another shape, Todd. Fumbling, nervous. His eyes darted like he already regretted breathing. And then Victoria stepped into frame. No mask. calm, commanding, whispering to a third figure. Wait, a third Janice from the HOA board. I blinked. She looked scared. Recording. No edits, no filters. Victoria hadn't just crossed a line. She brought her empire to the edge and pushed. And Janice. Maybe she wasn't as loyal as Victoria thought. I watched the footage again. Not just for the crime, but for the cracks. Victoria's cruelty, Todd's fear, and Janice. The way she flinched when Victoria pointed how her hands shook holding the flashlight. That wasn't loyalty. That was fear, or doubt. I saved the video to 3 drives, then 5. Wiped sweat from my palms on my jeans. Emily's photo stared at me beside the keyboard, calm beneath chaos. "You'd be proud," I whispered. I didn't flinch. My finger hovered over upload. Not yet. First, Brian. I needed one more chance at decency in this town. The sheriff looked like sleep hadn't visited him in days. I slid the USB across. "You need to see this. All of it." He watched, pale, silent, until Janice was there. I nodded. "You still think this is just a neighbor dispute?" He exhaled slow. "No, this is war, and this time..." He was on the right side. Brian watched the footage in silence. Victoria, Todd, the sludge, the dead black water. Each second seemed to age him. "I knew she was pushy," he muttered, "but this..." He paused the video, leaned back, covered his face with both hands. "She promised me things," he said. "Told me I could make sheriff in 2 years if I played ball with Crestview." I said nothing. Let the silence scrape at his conscience. "I'm a damn fool," he whispered. "She played me like everyone else." He looked up, eyes bloodshot but clearer than before. "I'll open a case. Quietly. We'll need time, but this is criminal." I slid a second USB across the desk. "For the county attorney," I said, "and one more goes live if anything happens to me." Brian nodded. No more hesitation. "Victoria Harlow," he said under his breath. "She has no idea what's coming." I smiled. "She's about to." Back home, I sat at the kitchen table, the same spot where Emily used to sip tea and mock HOA newsletters. Now her lake was poisoned, and her name was about to become part of something bigger. I opened the upload page. Title: HOA President Caught Poisoning. Private Lake. Full footage. No clickbait. No dramatics. The truth didn't need dressing up. I hovered a second longer, then clicked post. The file uploaded in 3 minutes. The world changed in 5. My phone buzzed once, twice, then lit up like wildfire. Comments flooded in. "Is this real? She needs to be arrested. Holy hell, this is Crestview." By noon, the video had 42,000 views. By night, local news ran it on TV. I watched Victoria's face flicker across the screen, frozen mid-crime. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something close to peace. Justice wasn't here yet. But it was awake. By the next morning, Crestview Heights didn't feel so perfect anymore. Sprinklers malfunctioned. HOA flags weren't flying. And at the clubhouse, people whispered instead of smiled. Victoria's photo, mid-pour at the lake, was everywhere. Even the old ladies from Tuesday Yoga were sharing it in group chats. One neighbor posted, "I always wondered why our dues kept going up. Guess now I know." Another replied, "She fined me for wind chimes, but she's out here dumping poison." At the grocery store, I spotted 2 board members arguing in the parking lot, one waving a printout of the video. The illusion was cracking. Not just her reputation, but her grip. She'd ruled them with fake charm and fear. Now neither worked. I stayed quiet, watched it spread like rot in a fruit bowl. Victoria built her empire on silence. Now the silence was turning against her, and I hadn't even shown them the worst yet. The HOA meeting was packed, standing room only. Victoria stood at the podium, perfectly polished. Her voice trembled just enough to seem sincere. "Friends," she began, "we're under attack. Lies are spreading. Smears, digital manipulation." She dabbed a fake tear. "This video, it's not real. It's been doctored by someone who hates our community." The crowd shifted uneasily. Some nodded. Others frowned. Then she dropped the real bomb. "He's trying to destroy our way of life. He forged documents, bribed people." I stood at the back, arms crossed. She hadn't seen me. Yet. I watched as her voice grew shrill, her performance more desperate. But something had changed. Whispers cut through her words. A woman in front turned to her neighbor and said just loud enough I saw them near the lake. At midnight. "What were they doing there if it's not theirs?" Victoria faltered. Her eyes found me. And that's when I stepped forward. I walked down the aisle slowly. All eyes turned. Some gasped. Others leaned forward like a plot twist just dropped. Victoria stiffened behind the podium. I held up a single sheet of paper, an old court ruling seal still visible. 15 years ago, I said, voice steady. Crestview HOA tried to steal land using forged easements. They lost. Murmurs rippled. I laid down copies of deeds maps, photos. One by one. This isn't the first time this tactic's been used, but it'll be the last. Then I pulled out a printed still frame from the footage, Victoria mid-pour barrel in hand. People gasped. "Here's your environmental protector," I added. "Caught poisoning what she doesn't own." Victoria's lips curled. "That's edited. It's fake." A man near the back shouted, "Then sue him and let the judge decide." The room shifted, not toward her, toward me. The crowd wasn't hers anymore, not after this. Victoria's smile twitched. She gripped the podium like it might float her out of this wreck. "Don't let him fool you," she snapped. "This is harassment. He's obsessed. He's trying to destroy everything we've built together." But the we landed flat. The crowd didn't move. Some crossed their arms. Others glanced at the evidence still laid out like open wounds. She turned to the board behind her. No one met her eyes. And then she cracked. "You people are nothing without me," she barked. "You want to live in chaos? Be my guest." A few gasps. One person laughed, sharp, cruel. She looked around like a queen, realizing the castle gates had been left open. And that's when she saw it. Her own image, now plastered on a resident's phone screen, headline, blazing HOA president caught in environmental crime scandal. The internet had already dethroned her. And this room was following close behind. I didn't raise my voice, just pulled a small projector from my backpack, set it on the table, and pressed play. No music, no edits, just silence. And then the crunch of gravel. The image appeared grainy but clear. Victoria Harlow hood, down, pouring a thick black substance into the lake. Then Todd, fumbling beside her. Gasps. A woman covered her mouth. Another whispered, "That's my kid's swimming spot." The footage zoomed Victoria's face in full frame. Calm, calculated, caught. She lunged forward, slamming the projector off the table. "This is illegal. You can't." A man stood up. "No, Victoria. What you did was illegal." Her voice cracked. He's lying. But no one was listening anymore. Phones were recording. Whispers became shouts. Even the board chairman took a step back from her. She wasn't the queen now. She was evidence. And I had just flipped the switch. She stormed out of the clubhouse, heels clicking like gunshots on tile. But the silence she left behind was louder. Within hours, Brian called. "I've got enough to open a formal investigation. We're seizing HOA records." By sunset, his deputies arrived, no sirens, just quiet authority. Victoria wasn't home. But Todd was. He stammered at the door, sweat beading. "I didn't plan it. She made me." "I didn't even know what was in the barrel." Brian raised an eyebrow. "You willing to put that in writing?" Todd looked around like the shadows might bite him. Then nodded. Inside, HOA files spilled across desks, payments, forged permits, surveillance orders. All roads led back to Victoria, and one document stood out: wire transfers from HOA funds to an account in her maiden name. Brian looked at me. "She's not just getting fined for poisoning a lake." "No," I said. "She's going down for everything." 3 days later, Victoria was served. Right there in her front yard, still in silk pajamas, clutching her phone like a lifeline. The deputy handed her the envelope. She didn't open it. She didn't have to. She already knew. The court date was set, and the town knew too. Neighbors who once hosted wine nights with her now crossed the street. Parents whispered at pickup. HOA board members resigned quickly. But something else happened too. Support poured in. A young couple dropped off homemade cookies at my door. For standing up, they said. Maria Gonzalez, who'd lost her garden to a fake HOA violation, offered to testify. "I've been waiting to see her fall," she smiled. "Let's make it loud." Even Evelyn brought out her old scrapbook photos, letters, receipts. Victoria had tried to silence individuals. Now those individuals had found each other, and their voices weren't whispers anymore. They were marching songs. The courthouse smelled like old wood and cold air. I sat at the front, flanked by folders, flash drives, and Evelyn wearing a brooch shaped like a hawk. Victoria entered minutes later, face pale beneath thick makeup, flanked by 2 attorneys dressed sharper than she looked. She didn't look at me, didn't look at anyone. Judge Morrison called order. State versus Victoria, Harlow charges including environmental violation, fraud, harassment, and criminal misuse of HOA funds. She pleaded not guilty. Of course she did. But when the prosecutor hit play on the lake video projected on a screen 10 feet tall, the room went silent. Every pixel betrayed her. Then came the bank records, the fake citations, Todd's affidavit. By the time the second witness stood, I could feel it. The room had turned. Not in anger, in understanding. They weren't just seeing her crimes, they were remembering what she took from them. They called my name. I stood, walked to the witness stand, and raised my right hand. Swore the truth. The courtroom was still. "My name is Jake Miller. I've owned that land for 10 years. It's more than property. It's the last place I held my fiancé's hand." I paused. Her name was Emily. We used to camp there every Friday. She died 5 years ago. I kept that lake alive for both of us. I looked at Victoria. She tried to take it with lies, with threats, with poison. I reached into my jacket, pulled out Emily's old journal. She once wrote, "Peace lives where memory is safe." I held the courtroom in silence. I didn't fight just for land. I fought to protect something pure, and because people like her count on us being quiet. I leaned forward steady. I'm not quiet anymore. Neither was the jury. The jury was out less than 2 hours. When they returned, not one met Victoria's eyes. The foreman stood. On all counts, guilty. Gasps. A few cheers stifled behind hands. Victoria didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat, frozen lips parted like the world had unplugged around her. Judge Morrison leaned forward. For environmental damage, fraud, and harassment, the court sentences Victoria Harlow to 8 years in state prison plus restitution to all victims named in this case. Evelyn squeezed my hand. Outside, the courthouse steps had filled with people, neighbors, reporters, victims. Some held signs, "Justice for Jake." "Save our lakes. HOA doesn't own us." Victoria was led past them in cuffs, and for once her chin didn't lift. No podium, no power, just footsteps echoing where a throne used to be. And I stood tall, not as a fighter anymore, but as someone finally free. The wind was softer now, no sirens, no headlights bouncing off water, just the ripple of breeze through pines and the creak of the old dock under my boots. I knelt by the edge of the lake, Emily's lake, and let my hand drift across its surface. It shimmered clear again. The restoration crews had come and gone. The poison was gone. So was the fear. But her presence, still here. I pulled a small tin from my coat pocket, inside her locket, one she wore every Friday night. I buried it at the base of our favorite tree, right where she used to read. For every piece of peace we earned, I whispered. Then I stood and watched the sky turn gold. The battle was over, but the memory, that was forever. And this place, it wasn't a war zone anymore. It was home again. Ours. This story was never just about a lake. It was about the right to protect what's ours, our homes, our memories, our peace. It was about saying no one, no matter how powerful or connected, gets to take that from you. Victoria didn't just lose a case. She lost because people stopped being afraid, because one voice became many. Justice isn't always loud or fast, but when it comes with clarity, and it leaves no doubt who was wrong. Have you ever felt like you were fighting a lonely battle against an unfair system or a power-hungry individual? How did you find the strength to keep going? What would you do if someone tried to take away the one place that held your most precious memories? If this story moved you, let us know in the comments. And if you believe more stories like this deserve to be told, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.